My name is Lydia Morgan, and for 12 long years, I believed I had finally escaped my past. That illusion ended the day I opened my front door and found my estranged family standing on my porch, faces hard, hearts colder than the autumn wind that cut through the Oregon air. At the front stood my father, Richard Morgan, tall and unsmiling. My brother Caleb leaned against the porch railing with a smirk that hadn't changed since high school, and my sister Hannah crossed her arms, her expression half pity, half disgust. Behind them stood a sharply dressed real estate agent, holding a clipboard stacked with documents. "You don't have a family anymore," my father said, his tone calm but venomous. "We're taking the house." For a moment, I couldn't breathe. The words struck harder than any slap. Then, quietly but deliberately, I pulled my phone from my pocket and dialed 911. Their eyes widened. They weren't expecting me to fight back. Once, I would have begged for understanding, because family, once upon a time, meant everything to me. We'd grown up in a middle-class neighborhood outside Portland, in a cozy colonial house with a white wraparound porch. My father ran a modest construction firm, and though we were far from rich, we had enough. My mother, Elaine, passed away from breast cancer while I was still in college. After that, I clung to the idea that Dad, Caleb, and Hannah were all I had left, that love would hold us together. By 28, I thought I had built a solid life for myself. After earning a marketing degree, I landed a job at Digital Vista, a fast-growing tech company, and worked my way up to a corner office overlooking the Willamette River. My salary was 6 figures, my future was stable, and my father never missed a chance to brag. "That's my Lydia," he'd tell everyone, pride swelling in his chest. "The smart one in the family." But the world has a cruel way of humbling you. When the 2009 recession hit, my department was dissolved. One Friday afternoon, my boss handed me a white envelope with my name on it and said the words no one ever wants to hear. "I'm so sorry, Lydia. It's not your fault. We're eliminating your division." I told myself it was fine. I had savings, experience, and references. I would bounce back quickly. And surely my family, my so-called support system, would stand by me. I couldn't have been more wrong. 6 weeks later, during our monthly family dinner, the illusion of unity shattered. I had hoped for encouragement. Instead, I got judgment. "Still unemployed?" Caleb asked casually, spooning mashed potatoes onto his plate. "Not yet," I said, forcing a smile. "But I've applied to several companies. Some promising ones, actually." Hannah twirled her wine glass and sighed. "My friend lost her job too, but she found another in 2 weeks. Maybe you're being too picky." "I'm not being picky," I replied. "Companies just aren't hiring right now." "Then try something else," my father cut in, his voice sharp. "No sense sitting around waiting for things to change." I swallowed hard. "I'm applying every day. I'm networking, taking certification courses." "Maybe you weren't as good as you thought," Caleb said with a shrug, not looking up. "People who want to work, work," Hannah added. Their words stung, but I kept my tone calm. "I'm trying my best. I just need a little time." Then I made the mistake of admitting my next mortgage payment might be difficult. My father didn't even blink. "That's your problem, not ours," he said, cutting into his steak. "We all have bills." The air in the dining room turned suffocating. I excused myself early, trying not to cry until I reached my car. But the tears came anyway, the kind that shake your whole body. The real betrayal came 2 days later. I was scrolling through Facebook when I froze. There they were, my family, smiling in a dozen photos from my cousin's birthday party. I hadn't even known there was a party. My father carving roast turkey, Caleb laughing with his wife, Hannah's kids blowing out candles. Everyone together except me. The deeper I scrolled, the more I saw family trips, barbecues, movie nights, all without me. When I called to ask why, my father's voice was disturbingly casual. "We figured you wouldn't want to come, given your situation," he said. "Besides, the restaurant was expensive. So you thought I couldn't afford it?" I asked, incredulous. "Well, can you?" he replied. "You said yourself you're behind on your mortgage." Hannah took the phone next. "Honestly, Lydia, it's embarrassing. People talk, you know? You used to be so successful." Then Caleb's voice joined in. "Dad doesn't want to waste energy on someone who can't get her act together." And finally, the last blow from my father. "Call us when you've fixed your life. Until then, we're done." The line went dead. So did every illusion I'd ever had about unconditional love. The months that followed were the hardest of my life. My savings vanished faster than I could blink. I sold my furniture, my TV, my jewelry, everything that wasn't essential. I stretched every meal, surviving on ramen noodles and peanut butter. When the mortgage company finally sent the eviction notice, I packed what little I had into my Honda Civic and drove away from the home I'd built with my own hands. For 3 weeks, I lived in that car. I parked overnight in Walmart lots, washed up in public restrooms, and applied for jobs at the library. Each morning, I told myself it was temporary. Each night, I felt hope slipping further away. Then, one rainy evening, my prepaid phone buzzed with an unfamiliar number. "Is this Lydia Morgan?" a gentle voice asked. "Yes," I whispered. "This is Melanie, nurse at Sunrise Haven Care Home. Your great Aunt Ruth Bennett has been asking for you. She's not doing well." Aunt Ruth. I barely knew her. My mother's aunt, an elderly woman who sent Christmas cards but rarely called. I don't think I can make it," I stammered, looking at my fuel gauge hovering near empty. "She specifically requested you," the nurse said softly. "She doesn't have much time left." There was a long pause. Then I said the only words that made sense. "I'll be there." The drive to the small town of Millersfield drained the last of my cash. When I walked into the care home, the receptionist eyed my disheveled clothes, but still pointed me to room 217. Aunt Ruth looked impossibly fragile. Her white hair fanned across the pillow, her skin translucent, but her eyes, a clear ocean blue, lit up when she saw me. "Lydia," she croaked, smiling faintly. "You look awful." I laughed, the first real laugh I'd had in months. "Thanks, Aunt Ruth. I missed you too." "Sit down," she said, patting the bed. "And tell me everything. The truth, mind you, I'm too old for polite lies." So I told her about losing my job, my house, my dignity, and my family, about sleeping in my car and feeling like a ghost no one saw. When I finished, her frail hand squeezed mine. "Shameful," she whispered fiercely. "Your mother would be proud of you, but of them? Never." For the next 3 weeks, Aunt Ruth became the one bright thread in my dark, unraveling life. The nurses allowed me to use the shower in an unoccupied patient room, and each morning I'd sit beside her bed as she sipped weak tea, her voice trembling but her mind sharp as glass. We talked about everything, about my mother's childhood, about Ruth's years as a teacher, about how the world had changed too fast for her liking. She asked about my work in marketing, even offering opinions on digital campaigns and slogans that somehow made perfect sense. She was old-fashioned in some ways, but brilliant in others, like a lighthouse still shining after the shore had shifted. One afternoon, she told me something that made my stomach tighten. "Your father never visits," she said, eyes flicking toward the window. "Not in years. None of them do." I tried to defend them out of habit. "They're busy, Aunt Ruth. Life gets in the way." "No," she said sharply. "They're selfish. Always were. Your mother was the good one. Like you. You deserved better." Her words pierced something raw inside me. I hadn't realized how much I'd needed someone to say that. A few days later, her breathing became shallow, her hands weaker in mine. when she slipped into unconsciousness. I stayed with her all night, holding her hand until the soft rhythm of her pulse finally stopped. The nurse came in quietly and touched my shoulder. "I'm so sorry," she whispered. I wept, not just for losing her, but for the kindness she had given me when everyone else turned away. 3 days later, I sat in the office of Martin Greaves, her attorney, while rain drummed softly against the window. He adjusted his glasses and spoke in a calm, deliberate tone. "Miss Morgan, your aunt made some changes to her will shortly before her passing. She was entirely of sound mind." He slid a folder toward me. "She left you her home and her savings, approximately $48,000 in investments. It's not a vast estate, but the property is fully paid off." I blinked at him, unsure if I'd heard correctly. There must be some mistake. We barely knew each other. "No mistake," he said gently. "She told me you were the only one who came when she called, the only family who showed up." For a long moment, I couldn't speak. Then quietly I whispered, "She saved me." I left the office in a daze, clutching the house keys and papers like they might dissolve if I loosened my grip. When I arrived at the address in Millersfield, the small 2-bedroom bungalow looked tired but peaceful, paint peeling, ivy creeping along the porch, yet somehow alive. The moment I stepped through the front door, a faint scent of lavender greeted me. Dust motes danced in shafts of sunlight from the window. It wasn't fancy, but it was safe. I sat on the worn floorboards, surrounded by silence, and let the weight of it all crash over me. The loss, the gratitude, the flicker of hope I thought I'd lost. For the first time in months, I allowed myself to cry freely. Then I stood, opened every window, and let the fresh air rush in. Aunt Ruth had given me more than a house. She'd given me a lifeline, and I wasn't going to waste it. The next 6 months were grueling but transformative. I poured every ounce of energy into fixing up the house and rebuilding my life. By day, I scrubbed floors, painted walls, and patched leaks. By night, I scoured job boards and sent resumes into the void. With the small inheritance, I replaced the broken furnace and repaired the roof, learning every trade from YouTube tutorials. I stretched every dollar, treating each purchase like a chess move. Finding work in a small town with no connections wasn't easy. My fancy corporate resume impressed no one. So I started small, offering free marketing help to local shops. My first success came with Miller's Hardware, where I helped the owner set up a website and improve his online presence. Within 3 months, his sales jumped 15%, and word spread fast. Soon I had 5 clients, then 12. I registered my business as Rise Marketing Solutions. My office was a corner of Aunt Ruth's spare bedroom, with a refurbished desk and a thrifted laptop. For the first time since losing everything, I woke up excited to work again. I was earning money, slowly, steadily, honestly. That's when I met Betty Hale, my 77-year-old next-door neighbor. She appeared on my porch one afternoon with a cherry pie and a warm smile. "New in town, dear? You looked hungry." Betty was a retired librarian with sharp humor and the kindest soul I'd ever met. Over the weeks that followed, she became my anchor, inviting me for Sunday dinners, introducing me to neighbors, teaching me how to tend the neglected garden. "You're putting down roots, Lydia," she said one evening as we watched the sunset from her porch swing. "That's a good thing. It's what you needed." "I'm trying," I admitted. "Some days still feel hard." She nodded. "Of course they do. You lost everything you thought mattered, but you gained something better. A chance to start over." Her words stuck with me. As I focused on growing my business, the memories of my family began to fade. I stopped checking their social media. I stopped wondering if they'd ever call. My new clients respected me. My neighbors valued me. For the first time in years, I was surrounded by people who cared without conditions. Then, during a basement clean-out one spring afternoon, I found something that would change everything again. It was a metal filing box, dusty and locked, tucked behind a stack of old Christmas decorations. The key was taped underneath, a very Aunt Ruth thing to do. Inside were neat folders labeled insurance, taxes, and property. But at the bottom was one marked Richard. My heart pounded as I opened it. Inside was a promissory note, dated over 20 years earlier, signed by my father. He had borrowed $50,000 from Aunt Ruth to save his construction business, with a promise to repay within 5 years. But the ledger told a different story. He had never paid a cent. Attached was a letter, written but never sent. Richard, it has been 7 years since I loaned you the money you begged for. You promised repayment in 5. I have heard nothing from you since. Your sister would be ashamed. Until you honor your word, I am cutting contact. Ruth Bennett. I sat there in the basement, stunned. So that was why Dad had forbidden us from visiting Aunt Ruth all those years. He hadn't wanted her to remind him of his debt or his shame. Beneath the folder, I found something even more heartbreaking, a bundle of letters from my mother to Ruth, written before she died. They painted a very different picture of my father than I had ever known, controlling, proud, resentful whenever challenged. One line from my mother's final letter burned into my memory. I worry for Lydia. She wants so badly to make him proud, but I fear one day he'll punish her for growing stronger than he is. She had been right. 5 years after Aunt Ruth's passing, my life barely resembled the ruins I had once crawled out of. At 35, I owned a thriving business, Rise Marketing Solutions, now with 7 employees and a proper office downtown. My clients trusted me, my reputation grew beyond Millersfield, and my home, Aunt Ruth's old bungalow, had been completely transformed. The peeling paint was replaced with warm cream siding, the garden flourished with roses and lavender, and the wraparound porch had become my favorite place to work on quiet evenings. Every corner of that house reflected who I had become, self-made, steady, and whole. The loneliness that used to haunt me was replaced with community. Betty Hale had become family to me, as had Sarah, who ran the bookstore across the street, and Miguel and Jonah, the cafe owners who'd hired my company for their website redesign. We had dinner together every Friday. Laughter came easily again, something I never thought I'd feel after losing everyone I loved. Then one ordinary morning, everything shifted. The headline in local business monthly featured my photo beside the words, "Rise Marketing, the woman who rebuilt Millersfield's Main Street." The article highlighted my success, my story of resilience, and the fact that I now owned a valuable property near the growing downtown district. 2 days later, an email arrived. "Hey Lydia, it's been a long time. Saw your article. Proud of you. Would love to reconnect. Maybe coffee sometime? Caleb." My hand froze on the mouse. 7 years. 7 years of nothing. No birthdays, no apologies, not even a text when I was homeless. And now he wanted to reconnect. I almost deleted it, but curiosity got the better of me. I agreed to meet, on my terms, at the corner cafe where Miguel and Jonah could keep an eye out in case things went south. When Caleb walked in, I barely recognized him. The smugness had been replaced by a kind of brittle weariness. He looked older, thinner, with deep lines carved around his eyes. "Lydia," he said with a forced smile, arms out for a hug. I didn't move. "Sit down, Caleb." He sighed, lowering himself into the chair across from me. "You look good. Really good. I read about your company. I mean, wow. I'm impressed. What do you want?" I asked. He blinked. "I can't just say hello?" "No," I said flatly. "You can't." He hesitated, then dropped the pretense. "Dad's business is in trouble. Construction's been rough. And the house, well, it's gone. We're struggling." Hannah mentioned you inherited Aunt Ruth's place, and, I leaned back, crossing my arms. Let me guess. You want to sell it? Not for me, he said quickly. For Dad. He's not getting any younger. He said the house was still family property. You know, technically, I interrupted. He signed away any claim the day he borrowed $50,000 from Ruth and never paid her back. The color drained from his face. You found that? I did, I said, and I found the letters Mom wrote about him. About you and Hannah too. You were all too proud to admit the truth. You abandoned me when I needed you most. Now you're back because you need something. Caleb swallowed hard. Lydia, come on, that was years ago. We were stupid. You know how Dad gets, he said things. I stood up, my voice calm but cold. You all said things, and I remember every one of them. He looked up, his voice cracking. You can't still hate us. I tilted my head. No, Caleb, I don't hate you. I just don't care anymore. I left him sitting there in stunned silence, the bell over the cafe door jingling behind me. That night, I sat on my porch with Betty, watching the fireflies blink over the garden. I told her everything. She sipped her tea, listening quietly. They'll come back again, she said finally. Greedy people always do when they smell stability. She was right. 3 weeks later, the knock came, loud and insistent. When I opened the door, there they were. My father Richard, older but still sharp-eyed, Hannah, expression guarded, and Caleb, looking anywhere but at me, and just behind them, a real estate agent holding a clipboard. Richard stepped forward. We're taking the house, he said, just as he had 12 years earlier. It was bought with family money. It belongs to the Morgans. I stared at him, barely believing his audacity. You mean the house that belonged to the aunt you stole money from? The one you abandoned until she died? His jaw tightened. Watch your tone, young lady. You've always had a habit of forgetting your place. Something inside me, years of hurt, anger, humiliation, finally settled into calm resolve. Actually, I said, I remember my place perfectly. I turned, picked up a folder from the entryway table, and handed it to the real estate agent. Inside were Aunt Ruth's original will, her notarized property deed, and the promissory note bearing my father's signature. This house is legally mine, I said, but if you try to contest it, I'll be happy to show a judge evidence that your company was built on fraud, unpaid debts, forged permits, falsified loan statements. I've done my research. The agent looked uneasy. Mr. Morgan, maybe we should. Shut up, Richard barked, but I could see it, the flicker of fear in his eyes. You can leave now, I said softly, or I'll make the call. I held up my phone, already dialed to the local sheriff's office. For a heartbeat, no one moved. Then Hannah turned, tugging at Dad's sleeve. Let's go, she muttered. This was a mistake. Caleb's eyes met mine, not with anger this time, but shame. I'm sorry, he said quietly before following them down the steps. When their car disappeared down the road, I exhaled. My hands were trembling, not from fear, but from release. For 12 years, they had lived rent-free in my mind, ghosts of a family I could never win back. But in that moment, standing on the porch of the home I'd rebuilt from ashes, I finally set them free. That night, I poured a glass of wine and sat under the stars. Betty joined me, her old rocking chair creaking beside mine. So, she said with a knowing smile, how does it feel? I looked out at the garden, the one I'd planted, the one I'd tended with my own hands, and smiled. Like the end of a story, I said, but the beginning of a better one. Because revenge, I realized, wasn't always about destruction. Sometimes it was about surviving so well that those who broke you have no choice but to watch, powerless, as you thrive. And that's exactly what I did.